Hello there, everyone. Buenos dias a todos, and welcome to this Spanish GCSE and iGCSE video tutorial. So in this particular tutorial, we are looking at another aspect of Spanish GCSE and iGCSE grammar, which is the distinction between por and para. So these two prepositions, which are both very common in Spanish and commonly confused by students as well. So we're going to go through the differences between them, how you could potentially translate them in English, how they're used exactly in Spanish, and make sure all of that is as clear as possible. So, just to introduce myself first, I'm Dhananjay Talwar, and I studied French and Italian for my MA degree at the University of Cambridge. I graduated back in 2015, and I've been in the field of education since then, mainly as a tutor. I have learnt over 20 languages myself to different levels, of course, but that does include at least 9 to fluency. So it's something that I guess you could say I'm somewhat passionate about. I have a lot of motivation for studying languages. I really enjoy it. And yeah, likewise, I have plenty of motivation for helping my students and giving them the tools to succeed in language learning while also having great fun at the same time and ultimately reach their goals and their target grades. So far, I have helped more than 500 different students to achieve or even exceed their target grade for GCSE or iGCSE exams in different languages while a full-time tutor. And I have taught about 8 languages so far to GCSE or iGCSE level, and several of those at high levels as well. Now, these are the Spanish GCSE and iGCSE exam boards. This is as of August 2025. There are slight differences from exam board to exam board, so I do recommend being aware of which exam board you are following, and your teachers should be able to help you with that information. Definitely try and prepare for using materials that are specific to your exam board, because even though there is a lot of overlap in the content and even on the skills examined, all of these exam boards will test you on reading, writing, speaking, and listening. It's still best to get a flavor for the format and the syllabus of your particular exam board. And be aware that that can change over time as well. Okay, now we're moving on to the part of Spanish grammar that we're looking at in this video, which is por and para. So I should say as well that this video is relevant for everyone. So that's for all students, because in this video, we're looking at a common part of Spanish grammar, which is the same. Spanish grammar doesn't change depending on your exam board. So it would be the same for all students. So regardless of your exam board, you should continue watching. So por and para are both prepositions, in fact, very common prepositions in Spanish. They can translate in different ways in English, but the most common translation is the preposition for in English. And that's why they can be particularly confusing for students, because both of them often translate in exactly the same way in English, or the students often think of them both as the equivalent of for in English. So it can be tricky to know when to use which one of these, por or para. And that is usually the most common area of difficulty, knowing when to use which one and what differences there are between them. So we're going to start by looking at the preposition por. Por is used to indicate a reason for doing something. For instance, you'd say, estudio español por mi trabajo. I study Spanish because of my job. So here, por actually translates as because of in English. That would be the most likely translation. And we use por in this particular instance because we're giving a reason, a motive for doing something. If you're traveling through a place or even around a place, you'd also use the preposition por. For instance, este autobús pasa por el centro de la ciudad, which means this bus goes through the city center. So por can translate as through, like in this particular example. And that's because they're going through a particular place, the center of the city, which is obviously a place. And therefore, you'd use the preposition por and not para. For time and duration, if you're expressing time and duration, then you would use the preposition por as well. For instance, you would say, voy a salir por unas horas, meaning I'm going out for a few hours. So here I've translated the preposition por as for in English. That likely makes the most sense. But yeah, whenever you're talking about time or duration, the time for which something happened, how long something continued for, yeah, you would use the preposition por. Um, Por is actually overall slightly more common than para. Yeah, and even though both of them are certainly commonly used in Spanish, and at GCSE and iGCSE level, you're very likely to come across both quite often. Uh, yeah, if you're in doubt and you want to just guess based on probability, then por is slightly more likely. But of course, by far the best thing is to memorize the reasons why you would use por and para. And yeah, to understand the differences between them. So here are a few more instances where we would use the preposition por. So por can also be used to indicate a mode of travel or of communication. So you'd say hablé con él por teléfono, for instance, which means I talked to him on the phone. So you can see that por, even though technically, yeah, is usually translated as for in English, can actually have many different translations in English. Here it translates as on. That's what sounds the most natural in English. And obviously, we're using por here because we're expressing a mode of communication on the phone. Likewise, if you used a particular form of transport, yeah, you can use the word por as well. When expressing costs and prices and talking about those, we use por again. So, for example, la gasolina cuesta 4 libras esterlinas 50 por galón, meaning petrol costs £4.50 per gallon. So here, por is actually translated as per. Whenever you're talking about costs and prices, whenever there's an exchange of some sort, money for goods, for example, or services, you'd use the preposition por instead of para. And lastly, por is used to show who's doing an action in the passive voice. So this is a slightly more specific use of por. Yeah, but you would always use the preposition por in this instance rather than para. For example, la carta fue escrita por un abogado o una abogada, depending on their gender, which means the letter was written by a lawyer. So when por has this function, essentially showing who the agent is or who did an action in the passive voice, it would usually translate as by in English. And that is, yeah, it's a fairly specific usage of only this preposition, really, por. Okay, por also pops up in many, many different Spanish expressions. Por and para, again, both of them have many expressions associated with them. Yeah, they form part of many, many different expressions, but por is, again, perhaps slightly more common overall, even in terms of Spanish expressions. So we're going to go through some of these. You can see that a lot of these will be things that Spanish GCSE and iGCSE students will simply memorize and already learn in any case, without necessarily thinking of the fact that they're using por or that por is part of these expressions. So por eso means therefore, or that's why, for this reason. Por desgracia is a way to say unfortunately, por desgracia or desafortunadamente. Por suerte means fortunately, one way to express fortunately. Por supuesto means of course. Por primera vez or por última vez, meaning for the first time or for the last time. Por ejemplo, for example. Por la mañana or por la tarde or por la noche means in the morning or in the afternoon, in the evening. So to express when during the day you did something, you'd use por. And por ahora, sorry, it means for now. Yeah, for the time being. So those are all expressions using por, quite common ones in Spanish. There are plenty of others as well, but this is, yeah, for GCSE and iGCSE, a pretty good list. Now we're going to look at the preposition para instead. So para is used to indicate quite a few things. It often does translate as for in English, but not necessarily. That can depend on its exact usage and the context as well. And yeah, the usage does differ from por. So they are both used, each of these prepositions are used with different functions, really. Para, unlike por, is used to indicate purpose. For instance, cambió de trabajo para ganar más dinero. He or she changed jobs to make more money. So para here means to, or in order to. And this example, so para followed by an infinitive of a verb to show, to express in order to or so that. is pretty common in Spanish as well. Yeah, and the reason why para is used is because there's a purpose here. He changed jobs with the intention, with the purpose, the aim or objective of making more money. So that's why we use para rather than por. If you're expressing a destination or talking about a destination, you'd use para as well. You'd say, for example, voy para mi casa, meaning I'm going home or to my house. Uh, por wouldn't make as much sense if you're expressing a destination, certainly. When discussing or talking about deadlines as well, you would use para. So you'd say lo necesito para el jueves, for example. I need it by Thursday or for Thursday. We could say either really in English. Um, yeah, again, because there's an idea of purpose, I suppose. Para tends to be associated with kind of a destination or an objective or final goal, like in this example as well. If something needs to be done by Thursday, then that's sort of the goal or the objective to hand it in or to do it by that particular deadline. So you use para for that too. And a few more instances where para would be used instead of por. For recipients, again, kind of a final destination where something is going to end up, you'd use para again. So este regalo es para Juan, for example. This gift is for Juan. Again, you'd probably translate para as for in English in this case, but it's indicating, yeah, a sort of a final goal, ambition, a purpose, essentially, and to express an opinion. So, para mí, el español es el mejor idioma. For me, or in my opinion, essentially, Spanish is the best language. I wouldn't quite say Spanish is the best language of the ones that I've learned, but definitely up there. And I do love the sound as well. But more importantly, we use para here because you're expressing an opinion, and para mí is a somewhat fixed phrase to say for me or in my opinion. But of course, you could replace me with another person as well. Yeah, so that's a reasonably specific usage of para. And you can also use para to express an unconnected idea. For example, el precio es muy caro para un apartamento tan pequeño. As we would say in English, that would be the price is very expensive for such a small apartment. So effectively, para is used, again, a slightly uncommon usage here, but it's used to connect ideas that are perhaps not otherwise linked, such as the price being expensive, that's one idea, and the apartment being small, that's the second idea. And para is used to effectively connect them and say the price is expensive given that, or for an apartment that is so small. Yeah, so again, a reasonably specific usage of para. And again, there are many expressions in Spanish that use the preposition para too. These are just a few of the most common ones. And for GCSE and iGCSE, you not need to know many of these, but this is a great starting point. So para siempre means forever, literally for always. Para mí, for me, in my opinion, for example. Estar para, and then usually would be followed by the infinitive of the next verb, means to be about to do something. Estoy para hacer mis deberes, for example, or mis tareas. I'm about to do my homework. Para entonces, by that time. Para otra vez, for another occasion. And there are plenty more as well. But yeah, for GCSE and iGCSE, you do not need to know too many of these expressions. Para is slightly less common than por overall. And as we mentioned, it tends to be associated with a purpose, objective, goal, or final destination. And that's still the way that I would think about it and try and remember it. Okay, now hopefully you've absorbed all of that. And now you can test yourself to see if you really did absorb all of it and how much. So we have a mini test with some sentences to translate from English to Spanish. And each of those sentences would contain either por, para, or both. So question number 1. How do you say in Spanish, he went to Spain to learn Spanish? Okay, so think through the categories that we went through earlier. Try and remember which one of these it falls into, which category. then decide whether you'd use por and para where it goes in the sentence and have a go at translating the whole sentence. I will give you a little bit of time because this is probably going to require some thinking through. Okay, and now I will show you this answer. So you'd most likely translate this into Spanish as fue a España para aprender el español. He went to Spain to learn Spanish. So here we've used para, of course, translating as to or in order to, yeah, because there is a purpose, there is an objective, a goal here, which is to learn Spanish. So he did something in order to do something else. And yeah, in those instances, you would use the preposition para instead of por. There could be other ways potentially of translating each of these sentences as well, but the translations I've given would certainly be the most common. Okay, question number 2. I'm always tired in the morning. Um, not really much of a lie, but have a go at thinking through how to translate this sentence. Again, the first thing I would think through is whether you've got to use por or para, where that preposition would go, and then translate everything in the sentence. So I'm going to give you a bit of time, some seconds, to think through how to put this in Spanish. Okay, and I'm going to show you the answer. So, estoy siempre cansado o cansada, if it's a girl speaking, por la mañana. The most important thing here is that we use por to express in the morning. If you want to say in or at a certain time of day, morning, afternoon, evening, and so on, night, you'd use por rather than para. So it would be por la mañana, for instance. Estoy siempre cansado o cansada por la mañana. Yeah, cansado means tired, and you would use the verb estar rather than the verb ser with the adjective cansado because it's a temporary feeling or state. Okay, and example number 3, which is a bit harder, slightly longer for sure, which is they were in the shop for an hour and bought a gift for their mother. So you can see in the English, we've got 2 instances of the word for. Yep. So same as before. Think through how you'd put this into Spanish. You're going to have to think about whether you have to use por, para, or both, and then translate those parts with por or para, and the rest of the sentence too. So I'm going to give a little bit more time, just because this is a longer one, more to translate. Okay, now let me show you the answer. So, estaban en la tienda por una hora y compraron un regalo para su madre. The more important thing here, of course, is the uses of por and para. Obviously, we've got both of them here. So one of these, one of these instances of the word or preposition for in English would translate as por. The other one would translate as para. The first one, for an hour, that would be por. You'd say por una hora because it's a time period or duration. And expressing time periods, you use por in Spanish. The second one, you'd use para because there's a recipient, or sort of, you could think of it potentially as sort of a final deadline or a final goal or objective as well. The gift was bought in order to give it to their mother with that clear aim in mind. But yeah, it is a recipient essentially as well. And for that reason, you use para instead of por. So it would be por una hora and para su madre. And the whole sentence, estaban en la tienda por una hora y compraron un regalo para su madre. So those tenses could be challenging too. The first verb goes in the imperfect tense, and then the second one should go in the preterite tense. Okay, So, just another quick quiz to test your understanding of por and para, these two really common Spanish prepositions. So, number one, what is the most common translation of por and para in English? This one, I think, yeah, most students will know, but I'll give you a little bit of time to think over it. Okay, and let me show you this answer. Both por and para are most commonly translated into English as for. It certainly does depend on the sentence, context, and the usage above all. But yeah, por and para are often thought of as equivalents of the English preposition for. So, fairly easy one to start it off. Number two, true or false? Por is the preposition used when talking about destinations in Spanish. So, if you're talking about where you're going to, would you use the preposition por? Give you a little bit of time to think over it. Okay, and I'm going to reveal the answer for this as well. This one is false. It's para that's used when talking about destinations instead. Yeah, para tends to be used with destinations, objectives, and so on. Number three, true or false again, para is used when talking about a deadline in Spanish. Quite a specific scenario. What preposition would you use to talk about a deadline? Okay, let me show you the answer for this one as well. This is true on this occasion. So para is used when talking about a deadline, when you're expressing a deadline by which, a time by which something has to be done. You'd use the preposition para rather than por. And lastly, number four, what part of speech or what kind of word, part of speech to use the technical term in terms of grammar, are both por and para. Let me give you a little bit of time to think through this. Okay, and I'm going to reveal the answer for this one as well. So, por and para are both examples of prepositions. Parts of speech would include nouns, verbs, adjectives, adverbs, prepositions, pronouns, and more. So, it can certainly be useful to know what part of speech particular words are. Both por and para are prepositions. Preposition is, it's quite difficult to define what a preposition is, but they often show the location of something or where it is in relation to something else. Okay, if you have any questions about any of this, or if you'd like to know more about more personalized help, which I do provide as well, you can get in touch by email, through Facebook, or even Instagram. And I post on Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn every single day, sharing my love of languages with the world, hopefully inspiring and getting more and more people to learn languages and giving them the tools to be able to do so while having lots of fun. I post a lot about GCSE and iGCSE language exams too. So a lot of guidance on how to revise, how to make sure you're as prepared as possible, how to learn grammar, vocabulary, and a lot more. So I recommend following me on each of those platforms. I do have many resources available, including free ones for Spanish, GCSE, and iGCSE, and other languages as well. And I do one-to-one sessions, group classes, courses, and plenty more. So don't hesitate to reach out if you'd like to know more about any of that.